good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to our session. My name is Terry O'Day, and I'm pleased to be your moderator for a vision for future deployment of zero and near zero emission heavy-duty vehicles. We have a group of panelists that really span a range across this industry and question of fuel types of business models and influence, as well as different market categories geographically. So I want to make no further ado. I'd like to tell you my background is I'm Vice President at EVgo, which is the nation's largest public fast charging company for electric cars. And I also serve as council member in the city of Santa Monica. But let me turn to our panel. The first up will be David Peterson from ChargePoint. David leads ChargePoint's Fleet Solutions team focused on developing market-leading products and services for managing and operating light, medium, and heavy-duty electric vehicle fleets. Previously, David was with Nissan, where he led EV market development for the charging infrastructure and their charging infrastructure strategy. And prior to Nissan, David was with an investment analyst firm doing M&A for Benelux China Ventures.
I didn't know you were going to read all this.
All right. I'm going to keep these tighter because we have a lot of panelists here with many credentials. So David, why don't you go ahead and get us started? Good. Forward, back.
Thanks. So that was China Benelux joint ventures, for the record. So good afternoon again. I'm David Peterson with ChargePoint. I'm our Director of Fleet Solutions. And many of you are probably familiar with ChargePoint as a consumer-oriented company, focused on home, multifamily, workplace, public charging. We've actually been doing a lot with fleets for many years, really since our inception about 10 years ago. And that's been mostly with light-duty fleets. But we really see the future as, we see fleets playing a larger and larger role in the future. And internally, we like to say we're looking at the fleetification of everything for the next phase of e-mobility. And so in my brief comments, I'm going to talk about the heavy-duty bus market. I'll address heavy-duty vehicles in logistics and delivery. I'm not at all going to talk about eVTOL, which is a type of fleet, and that stands for vertical takeoff and landing. But I think there are two important trends I want to point out that relate to transportation network companies. Number one is autonomous drive. I think it will be important to look at how autonomous drive gets applied in TNC fleets, as I think there'll be spillover into certainly bus and logistics and delivery fleets. And the other is business model innovation. I wouldn't necessarily assume that what we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years will be business as usual, especially in the logistics and delivery space, but why not also transit? I think we're seeing a lot of new business models, companies that really start to look a lot like fixed route transit, but it's all coming from the private sector. So I wouldn't take it for granted that the business models that you're familiar with today continue into the future. So let's talk a little bit about the bus market. So I think of all of the heavy-duty segments, the bus market is probably the most robust in terms of its likelihood of going 100% electric. And there are a number of reasons for this. I think first and foremost, the largest transit agencies in North America are making commitments or about to make commitments to have their electric bus fleets go 100% electric. To have their bus fleets go 100% electric. And that's not insignificant because these fleets, the top 1% of transit fleets in North America account for about a third of the demand. And the top 10% actually account for 60% or really 2/3 of the demand. So once the largest transit agencies go, the whole market goes. And so that's pretty significant. And so in terms of looking out to the future and painting a vision, I would argue that probably within the next 5 years, 50% of deliveries would be electric. And then within 10 years, certainly 100% would be electric. And we're talking about a 5,000 vehicle per year on average delivery. And so if you look out 5 years, it's about 2,500 vehicles that would be electric that would be delivered. Now, why has this market become so robust? Or why will it become so robust? And I think its likelihood so high. I think it's a number of factors, but I'll boil it down to two. Number one, I think policy has played a large role. By the nature of being public transit agencies, they are open to a lot of scrutiny. I think they've been pushed to look at zero-emission technologies a lot sooner than a lot of different segments. So the policy angle has certainly helped orient transit agencies to be looking at electrification. The second piece is really about access to capital, and the Federal Transit Administration and its Low-No program has really made it easy, maybe I shouldn't say easy, but they've made capital available to a lot of transit agencies to experiment with electric technology. And this is important because it takes the capital risk away, and it allows the transit agency just to focus on the technology risk. And so they get to think deeply about how they want to electrify their fleets. Is this technology going to work for them? Not worrying about how am I going to get capital to just get a few buses, 2, 3, 4, whatever it may be, and the charging infrastructure to support it. So I think that's been critical to seeding this market and helping it grow. So going forward, what kind of things should we be looking for? Well, from a charging perspective, from ChargePoint's perspective, we're trying to minimize the amount of power that a site or an entire transit agency is going to require to charge these buses. Right? We don't want people designing systems to the maximum charging capabilities of that bus, call it 120 kilowatts or 150 kilowatts, when all that might be needed is just 50 kilowatts or 75 kilowatts overnight, or for whatever the case may be. So minimizing power is absolutely going to be critical, and doing so in an intelligent way is going to be important. So the real bottleneck that we anticipate is going to be on upstream utility distribution infrastructure. More specifically on, excuse me, I'm a little hoarse today. More specifically on, actually the tea would be awesome. Thanks. On the substation upgrades. Because substation upgrades can actually trigger a significant delay. And so looking ahead, it's going to be really important for utilities and all actors, frankly, involved in the process to work closely together to anticipate where electrification is going to be happening, and so we can minimize any delays. But the truck market, I think, is vastly different. It's a much larger market. If you look at all Class 4 to Class 8 vehicles, which include medium-duty vehicles as well, that's a 400,000 vehicle market, many times larger than the bus market. If you just focus on what we would traditionally call heavy-duty, it's probably Class 7, Class 8. That's about a 200,000 vehicle market. And this market, specifically the heavy-duty market, shares none of the characteristics or has none of the indicators that the bus market has. And in the bus market, you've got new entrants like Proterra that are delivering real product that's supported. You have incumbents that are going to be delivering product that's supported. So you have all the indicators there of a healthy market, plus customers that want these vehicles. In the truck space, you don't have this at all, especially heavy-duty truck. You don't have a single incumbent OEM that is delivering any electric product today. That's a problem, especially when we have a lot of programs that are emerging talking about heavy-duty electrification. Now, I've limited my talk to focusing on road, not talking about off-road. But where's the product? And this has been, I think, an interesting question, because we have customers that have told us, we want this, we're ready for it. We've analyzed all the numbers. On an operating side, it all makes sense. Maintenance costs are less, the fuel cost is less, it's a no-brainer. So what's the problem? So the problem has been the historical price of batteries. And now you're starting to see announcements be made, such as Cummins, Tesla, and they're soon going to be flooding in. And I'm speaking here just about Class 7, Class 8. So now, and I think also that the battery price here, this is the pack level pricing, is actually less than what's stated here by Bloomberg. But this now allows manufacturers to bring a product to market that's competitive with a $100,000 to $130,000 tractor or semi-truck, where before they couldn't. And this is absent any incentives. So I think this is absolutely key to getting this market going, and I think we're going to see more and more electrification of urban delivery and drayage. And so I would predict that within 5 years, that starts to electrify significantly, and within 10 years, it's all electric. And then I'd say long haul starts to electrify within 10 years, but I wouldn't necessarily assume that it's the same way, the same business model or operating model that you see today for long haul. And certainly in the medium duty space for pack sizes that have made sense, we have some solid new entrants. Again, there are no incumbents that have actually brought product here. So I think we're going to see a shift. Already Daimler's made announcements, Fuso's made announcements. So I think in the next 5 years, you're going to see a market with both new entrants and with existing players that are incumbents that will make this more of a robust market, much like the bus market. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, David. We'll move on to our expert on hydrogen. Sylvain Cassanguay founded Nordresa in 2015. He'll tell you about this company and his outlook for heavy-duty vehicle market. Let's see. This one? Yep.
Just to make a brief point, I'm not into hydrogen. I'm into medium-duty class electric vehicles. I don't know. We were switched from another conference. Actually, Nodresa is an electric powertrain supplier. We design, manufacture, and commercialize electric powertrain. We've been involved in several electric vehicle programs back in Canada, and some of our staff also worked at Tesla. And we are now coming into the medium-duty market, partly because what David mentioned is actually this market is lacking of proposal. And as David mentioned, the battery pricing is making its sense now into this industry. So I was asked today to speak a little bit about our demonstration program that we did with Purolator. Purolator is the largest operator in Canada. They are the largest parcel delivery in Canada. They have almost 4,000 trucks. And they came to me asking for a solution where they could eventually electrify up to 75% of their fleet. And that actually made a case for the business to be able to raise money and support a prototype demonstration with them. And now we're bringing this solution into U.S. market this year. Basically, the reason why we're actually we think that it's good option is that the battery price now makes sense. The battery density has reached a level of almost 160% raise between the first generation, it was commercialized in 2011, and actual solutions. And as for the price, we see a drop that was almost 70% in 8 years. So it's going to be available. It's going to make sense. And some people are asking who needs to pay for the premium of driving green. And I'm just here to say, well, actually, it's going to be the reversed. Who's going to have to pay for using a conventional powertrain? Our solution ends up like as a total cost of ownership, giving our customers anything between $75,000 to $150,000 back in their pocket. So it's good for them. So we think that this solution will be mainstream very shortly. Hopefully, California can be helpful in terms of pickup. And our proposal now, we have two nature of platforms. So we address parcel delivery van type, so walk-in vans, and also cube type based on Isuzu N series platform. So those are the two solutions that's going to be available on the perhaps in June this year in California, and it's already available now in Quebec and Ontario in Canada. Just to give you an idea of our solution, it's winter ready. We've been proving it during the winter. We've had minus 22 Celsius. I don't know, it's transferred to Fahrenheit, but it's really cold. And so the system worked very well, even at those temperatures. The batteries are insulated, obviously, and they're heated as well. So the battery cells never really know that it's cold outside. We've managed to do it, and our solution actually is vertically integrated in terms of software. So we've designed a BMS, so we know the cell, we know the state of health of the battery, but we also have designed all the controls and the vehicle graphic interface. So we have access to a full software upload also over the air. So if we know how to optimize a system for a customer, we can eventually upload it during the night. And we offer actually from 2 to 7 tons of payload, and we have 3 nature of battery packs. There are 2 on the website, but we can actually extend the battery size by increment of 80 kilowatt hours. And that's it for me. I don't know if there's we take the questions afterwards. After? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Sylvain. Well, it looks like I failed my one moderator responsibility. I had one job. The hybrid guy, you told him he was a hydrogen expert. Oh, well. Thank you, Sylvain. You answered David's question, where is the product? And that was the important part, I think. Next is our hydrogen expert, Sean Chiguza. And Sean has more than 25 years of experience in the automotive industry, including in fuel cell development. So he will give us another view of this new technology and the market opportunity that's unfolding.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Chigusa. I'm working at Tatsuno, North America. Tatsuno, North America is a subsidiary company of the Japanese dispensing system manufacturer, such as gasoline, CNG, and LNG, and hydrogen. And from 1911, this company established in Japan, and they making gasoline dispenser in Japan, and currently they have almost 70% share in Japan as a gasoline dispenser. And as a hydrogen dispenser, currently we have actually almost 50% share in Japan. Currently in Japan, currently almost 85 hydrogen stations in Japan, from Fukuoka to the Sendai, and maybe this year more 30 stations will be built in the metropolitan area in some Hokkaido or Kyushu. Maybe we also provide some hydrogen dispenser to the Japanese market. And my responsibility is for the U.S. market, so we will trying to enter U.S. market with our hydrogen dispenser. And my background is actually automotive engineers, and over 25 years at Toyota, include autonomous driving system and some model-based intelligent diagnosis system for the fuel cell systems. This technology adapting to the current Mirai. So this Mirai is my children. Yeah, and currently hydrogen heavy-duty application is Toyota trying to the heavy-duty truck, Class 8 truck, currently testing in this area, and using Mirai fuel cell systems. But this is a very, very early stage, and we have to resolve some problem, especially cost. And as you may know, hydrogen infrastructure is not enough currently, so we have to, we need a more hydrogen infrastructure in the California and nationwide. At present, for the light-duty vehicle, such as the Toyota Mirai and Honda Clarity and some of Hyundai hydrogen vehicle, currently in the market, over 3,000, if I remember it correctly, 3,500 cars in California. So recently, we have some problem at the hydrogen station because a customer is growing quickly. So, for example, Torrance hydrogen station in the 5 p.m. or 6 p.m., maybe 6 or 5 Mirai waiting for the refilling. It's meaning customer is frustrating some why we cannot, I cannot refill the hydrogen quickly. So we are working with Toyota very closely for the more hydrogen station in the California. Maybe next few years we will provide new hydrogen dispenser and to the California market. This is just a plan, but we're working hard for the deployment hydrogen station. For the truck, of course, truck needs some long-range cruise range because they need, for example, from Los Angeles to the New York City. It's a very, very long distance, so we need more hydrogen station in the from Los Angeles to the New York port, for example, or maybe 5 or 6 from connecting from Los Angeles to New York. So we and Toyota working hard from some gas company. Next in 10 years, we want to trying to build a new station for the truck application. But maybe we need to discuss after that. We need new technology for the refilling technology for the hydrogen heavy-duty truck because the current refilling protocol is for the light-duty vehicle. So if we apply to the current refilling protocol to heavy-duty application, maybe refilling time need a long time. Currently, over 20 or 30 minutes are needed. So we need some new technology for the refilling technology for the heavy-duty application. And if heavy-duty application is deployed to nationwide, we need more hydrogen. So we need new production, new hydrogen production technologies. And next, we have to need some hydrogen transport technologies such as liquid hydrogen and or some Japanese company development right now need organic metal hexane. They have a booth outside door, so if you need it, if you're interesting, I can explain to the new technology for the new transportation, hydrogen transportation system. But this is very early stage, but we need some new technologies. Okay, I will, that's it, thank you.
Thank you. We have a late change on our slides that we need to upload, so excuse us. In the meantime, I'll introduce Yuri Friedman. And Yuri has broad experience as a developer and investor in gas infrastructure and power generation assets. In his current role as Senior Director of Business Development for the SoCal Gas Company, he manages the R&D activities and growth initiatives across a portfolio of investments. And prior to doing this, he previously held positions in infrastructure investments for Sempra Gas and as Director of Corporate Mergers and Acquisitions for Sempra Energy. Yuri, please join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry, and good afternoon. The clicker should be here. Thank you. So
It's in front of you.
thank you. The title of my presentation is very prescriptive, but what I'd like to do is to talk about something a little broader. What I'd like to talk about is how we, as a state, as a country, set goals, environmental goals, policy goals, and how we can accomplish them. And to that end, let's talk about. Thank you. Let's talk about dual set of challenges that we face. It is a very straightforward concept, but I personally think that something gets lost a lot. We are trying as a society to address two problems which are interrelated but separate. And one is the greenhouse gas mitigation, which is addressing the climate change, and the other one is addressing the air quality issues, which, although partially resulting from the same chemicals, has distinctly different mechanism, distinctly different set of chemicals, and accordingly different ways to address that. So with that in mind, most people here in the audience, I would assume, have either academic or analytical or financial background, and I think all of us approach problems the same way. We first agreed about what the problems are, how we frame them. Then we think about what matters for these problems, and only then we can march toward choice of solutions. And by now you probably know where I'm going with that. What I would like to argue is that instead of choosing a solution and then trying to explain how that solution is the best, I would argue that typically in any kind of issue there is no single solution, because the problem is usually sector specific, it's issue specific, and accordingly you need to find solutions that are tailored or that are a best fit to a specific sector. Let's take a look at the issue of air quality. Just think about the facts on the right. And it gives me a pause every time I look at that slide, and believe me, it gives me no joy to present those numbers. These numbers, by the way, are dated, and they're probably understated, because for example, last bullet point about the $1 billion costs, well, I went to the CDC site today, and they say that the total asthma costs in the US are about $56 billion. We are more than 10% of the country's population. Just think about the numbers, that, not to mention the human health, not to mention everything else associated with that. I will further say that it probably comes as no surprise to everyone here that the air quality is linked to emissions from transportation, and emissions from transportation are centered along at the highways, and highways, as it happens, go a lot through disadvantaged communities. It's a very real problem for those who live by those roads, for those whose kids play every day in this air. So it is every bit as real as you can think. So let's think about, we frame that problem in not just emotional terms, but also in the society terms, in the financial terms. Let's think about what is the root of the problem. Look at this chart and think about how striking that conclusion is, or at least it is to me. So emissions from the NOx from heavy and medium duty trucks represents as much as all other sources combined. And I'm rounding this up, I haven't done the numbers, but you can all do your eyeballing. So, we all were taught in various stages in our life to find out the root cause and address that. I don't think there's any question looking at this chart, what is the root cause? And I'm not arguing we should not be addressing all of them, but in terms of setting the priorities, to me it is very clear what these priorities should be, if you are serious about the air quality and if you want to address the issue. Now, from here, we are going to talk about what can be done to address the issue, and I know we'll have, I'm sure, multiple disagreements with my fellow panelists here. We are not going to guess what the future looks like. At least I'm not going to do that, because if there's anything I learned over my time in business is that just when everyone agrees how the future looks like, it changes on you dramatically. And that happened to me, and I'm sure to all of you guys more than once. So the only thing I'll say is that the solution that can help address the half of the problem of air quality is in place today. It's called natural gas truck. It is in place today and can be purchased. I'm not arguing that EV trucks will not be on the roads. I'm not arguing that. All I'm saying is that, again, going back to the number of people who are impacted with this today, going back to society costs, if you are serious about addressing the issue today, that is the solution that we see is viable in the market, and I'm not aware of an alternative. So in my mind, looking at that with a clear eye is a responsible step. Now, as with any technology, we think about, can this go to different sectors? We think we can. We probably have more disagreements with the crowd here, and solution will be sector specific. Ultimately, just like short haul, just like light duty may be electric may be the best fit, the natural gas may be the best fit for the long haul. As far as the transit and fleet, I don't know. Off-road, I don't know. Marine vessels, I probably do know, because we know that marine vessels, for example, in the Atlantic Basin, are converting actively to LNG because of the new maritime standards, because they have to meet low sulfur standards. And I'm not arguing there won't be electric ships, but for now, that seems to be going the way of the gas. So again, this is not either or to me. This is looking at it sector by sector. Let's think about how I talked about air quality until now. The question becomes, well, does that natural gas truck address the second problem that we as a society are trying to address, which is the greenhouse gas? And I thought about throwing here that chart just to say that we talk a lot about transportation, we talk a lot about industrial and generation. Well, agriculture, by the way, is almost as big an emitter on a greenhouse gas inventory basis as generation. And what we are trying to do, we're trying to look at this and say, look, if you, instead of allowing this methane to be emitted into the atmosphere, capture it and put it into the truck to displace the diesel truck that today emits smog chemicals into the air of California, you're actually going to be in the negative in terms of carbon intensity. That's the right-hand side chart. It's very simple logic. And to me, I'm prepared to debate it with anyone who wants to, but to me, this is logical, as simple as it gets. Pulling it all together, in our opinion, if you are going to put a public policy funds in place to resolve this problem, you are going in a heavy-duty sector to accomplish more with doing it in natural gas. Again, a simple function of the fact that the product is in place today, it can solve the problem today. You are going to make significant dent in a tailpipe criteria pollutant as opposed to other alternatives. That's the second chart. And going back to the right-hand side, you actually are going to make comparable impact on greenhouse gas. Granted, that's a function of how much renewable gas you're going to use, but ultimately you can make significantly bigger impact on greenhouse gas emission if you're going to go with renewable gas. What does it mean for us on the policy front? On the policy front, I will start at the bottom of that slide. I really don't want to argue with anyone what's better, gas than electric. I do think it should be the fact-based and a rational approach. Again, agreeing what the problem is, looking at the suite of solutions and picking the ones that fit given sector. To that end, the same should go toward the balancing the short and mid-term NOx reduction goals and longer-term greenhouse gas reduction goals. In my mind, in our mind, we should, and we are playing a role in figuring out how we can apply our infrastructure to that end, because we have infrastructure that's been paid for by the ratepayers and it can serve in multiple ways addressing those goals, whether it's R&D, whether it's using existing pipes in the ground to serve that purpose. And we are prepared to work on that, and we are fairly confident that we have a lot to offer to the challenge of air quality and to the challenge of greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Yuri. Let me switch over to Matt's presentation. Next, we have Matt Horton, who is the COO of Proterra, where he is focused on his customers' needs, including sales, marketing, financing, and customer service. And let's see, where's your presentation? It's not moving for me. We lost it when we switched to Yuri's. What do you have? There we go, Matt.
Am I going to use this? All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matt Horton. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Proterra. What that means for those who have no idea what a Chief Commercial Officer would be, it basically means anything customer related at Proterra is what I care about. It's sales, marketing, customer support, and service. So we're talking about a lot of different categories today. There are many of them that I will be uniquely unqualified to talk about, but there is one thing I know really well, and it's battery electric buses. So as part of my role, I get to travel all across the country talking to transit operators in every state, in Canada and other places as well. And I want to share a little bit with you today about what's actually happening in the heavy-duty transit market. It's a very, very exciting time. So for anybody who doesn't know Proterra, we're the leader in battery electric bus and technology and deployments here in North America. That's an image of our Proterra Catalyst. It's a 40-foot long transit vehicle. And while it can carry up to 77 passengers, it gets the energy efficiency equivalent of about 26 miles per gallon. So it's a highly, highly efficient way to move people around. And at Proterra, that's what we're focused on. We want to make sure that clean, quiet transportation is available for everybody. So at Proterra, we believe that EV is going to be the future of heavy-duty transportation. And I don't disagree with Yuri that the future is hard to predict. However, before joining Proterra, I spent a lot of time in venture capital, and my job was to look at what's happening in a market and look at the trends and make educated guesses on where things are going. With Proterra, I think all of the elements are lining up that I think we can all make some pretty educated guesses about where this market is going. When you look at the chart here, this was prepared by a third party, looking at all of the zero-emission bus procurements that are going on in the market. This is what they found. Now, I had to laugh a few weeks ago. I read an article that said, I was saying that electric buses aren't particularly popular with U.S. transit agencies because only 2% of the vehicles out on the roads today are electric. I had to laugh because that completely misses the story. That is like driving with your rear view mirror. What's happening in transit, as you can see, right around 2014, a significant uptick in the activity. Now, I like to point out to my boss, that's the year I joined Proterra, but it doesn't actually have much to do with that at all. Our industry has been growing and maturing rapidly. There are really four big drivers that have made that curve go so steep as a leading indicator. And one thing I'll point out at the top of that, for 2017, battery electric buses accounted for more than 10% of all the transit buses sold in the United States. So again, as a leading indicator, that is a great sign of where we're headed, and you don't have to be a statistician to make an educated guess about where that line is going to continue to go. There are really four things that are driving that. The first is improved range. When I joined our company, our most capable vehicle could go about 30 miles on a single charge. This last summer, we took one of our vehicles to a test track and drove 1,100 miles between charges. It took us 3 days to get all the energy out of that vehicle. The second is that charging has become much more standardized, and I'm sure David will take some opportunity in the Q&A to talk more about that. But both for plug-in and for en-route charging, the industry is converging on charging standards. The big story here has been the sharp decline in battery costs. They're down about 75% in the last 5 or 6 years. And then finally, our vehicles, electric vehicles, are proving to be very, very reliable in public transit. But the proof for me is really in what customers think about it rather than what I would say about it. And at Proterra, we're really proud. Proterra alone, we have more than 65 customers. That's 65 different cities across the U.S. that have taken their first steps forward and purchased battery electric buses with us. Importantly for us, many of them are repeat customers, some on their third or fourth procurement already of electric buses. And it's not just a California phenomenon. A lot of the time we think these things happen in California and that's it. As you can see, the distribution across the U.S. It's getting big cities, small towns, red states and blue states. The electrification of transit seems to be one thing that lots of people can agree on today. So just a couple of quick words on the competitive dynamics that we see. Again, this is just in the battery electric bus or in the bus market. But you can see again that green line dropping fairly quickly. That is the price, the first cost price of a battery electric bus. So since the days of over $1 million just a couple years ago, we're now down around $700,000 for a new battery electric bus. And when you look at diesel hybrid, CNG, or diesel buses, they have, as a group, clicked up in price about 3.5% every year, while battery electrics continue to fall at about 4% per year. So again, we can see these trends, we can see where this is going. And this is so important in transit because transit operators are making decisions for vehicles that are going to be on the road for 12 to 15 years. And with the way that they procure, they're speaking for buses that will be on the roads for 17 years or more. And this is causing a lot of transit agencies at this moment in time to look at these trends and say, what do I want to tie my future to? Do I think this is the right time to make a bet on the long-term future of fossil fuels? Many of them are saying no, and they're now moving aggressively toward electric vehicles because, frankly, transit professionals are beginning to be concerned about stranded asset risk if they make more purchases of fossil fuel-powered buses today. Finally, I'll end up with this is my last slide. Not only are those first cost advantages that EV is gaining real, but when you look at the total cost of ownership, including maintenance and the fuel savings over the 12-year life of a vehicle, for most customers today across the U.S., it's already more cost-effective over the lifetime to buy and operate a battery electric bus. So look forward to the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. I just got the 5-minute signal for the end of this panel. So I'd like to offer first, if there are audience questions, that we might be able to get some burning issues addressed. Do you have a question?
Well, I don't know how burning it is, but first of all, I would agree with you, Sean, that infrastructure as a driver of Mirai, anything you can do to improve the infrastructure of charging or building stations is great. My question is, in a recent panel, there was a lot of discussions in actually adoption of battery electric technology out in the marketplace. Like what you said, Matt, that your issues about improved range, charging standardization, declining battery costs, service, these were all things. And then they spoke that the next hurdle was actually more of a human one, changing about fleet managers, drivers, training issues. Would you agree that that's the next frontier for adoption, or are we missing other things?
Question.
I can definitely speak to that because I spend my time talking to those people, operators, maintenance personnel that are going to be making the changes. It is true that there is a little bit of a learning curve that people have to go through. But I would say, generally speaking, you look at drivers, driving a battery electric bus is almost exactly the same as driving a hybrid or a traditional bus. The things that they do notice, though, is it's very quiet and they don't have to worry about diesel emissions around them. So while things are different and they do require some change and some training, it's fairly straightforward, and generally I'd say most folks find the benefits really outweigh the downsides.
And I'd just add to that, in the trucking space, one of the biggest problems the trucking industry faces is hiring new drivers. And electric vehicles actually act as a recruitment tool. Young drivers want to drive electric. So this was an unexpected finding, but they're really considering it because finding drivers is absolutely critical to their business today.
I have a question here from Denny Zane, former mayor of Santa Monica, just for full disclosure purposes.
It seems to me that the most vigorous debate is really about heavy-duty trucks and what's the technology that meets that. There are many people maybe might concede other parts of the market to one of the other technologies, but really the Class 7, Class 8 trucks, the long-haul trucks, et cetera, is the big debate. And Matt, I really would love to know either what you might have to offer us on that, or who we would talk to at Proterra that could give us, your company's view of that issue.
Sure. So I can answer in part. I'd say we could definitely have a much deeper discussion off the record about our views on that market and participation there. I think we should all put it on the table that is probably the hardest challenge to solve in transportation. It's the one that we've always looked at. For years we have been talking about: is it gaseous fuels, liquid LNG? Is it hydrogen? Is it faster charging rates for vehicles with larger battery systems? I think there are many markets where I think the answers are becoming more obvious. That's one that I think there is still quite a bit of debate around. I think it's a market that is evolving, again, more slowly than the rest in terms of new providers coming to the market, but with participants like Tesla, Cummins, and others now starting to take a real interest, I think there are going to be better options out there. In my own view, it's really going to come down to what happens with charge rates, charge time, and the storage capacity of the vehicles. The batteries, again, are advancing so quickly, and what we've been able to demonstrate on a transit vehicle, I believe a lot of that will be applicable to long-haul trucking. But getting the charging infrastructure and the charge modes to work well, I think that's a big question still.
I think, Yuri, do you want to add to that?
I appreciate, thank you, Matt, for the description of challenges in the sector. If you give me a phone number, we'll give the truck salesman and call you this week.
And I think we might have time for one more question. Felicia?
Sure, and it builds on that. I've heard that one of the biggest challenges with long-haul trucking is the ownership of the trucks, and how do we get around that issue and incentivize people who have to own their trucks and pay for them and get them to switch out?
Actually, I think the biggest issue is finding drivers. Most drivers don't want to drive long haul. Nobody wants to be gone on the road for a week, a month. People are done with that lifestyle, or it's not attracting the next generation of drivers. So baked into kind of my comments earlier, I don't know if you caught it, but business models. And you're absolutely right on in terms of talking about how that might change. And I think you just have to look today at what different operating models are out there. And there's some that support a driver going home every night to their home. And one of those models is like drop and hook, right? And so when we think about, and drop and hook is basically a truck driving between two nodes, the same two nodes, and just dropping off a trailer, picking up a trailer, dropping off a trailer, in both taking a trailer, picking one up, bringing it back, right? Going back and forth, just bringing trailers around all day to designated locations. And then thinking about what a charging model could be around that, right? So you're not thinking about a truck driving across the country anymore. You're thinking about a truck just going back and forth between two nodes, right? And that truck will have downtime, or maybe it'll have 100% utilization because now you're just swapping out drivers, or maybe it's autonomous. So I think business models are going to change. I think you're absolutely right about the truck ownership piece. Who takes on the technology risk? Who's actually going to be driving the truck? I don't think we all have the answers today. But I think you're absolutely right to be thinking about changing business models.
So,
just complete, like as a commercial truck powertrain OEM, let's say we can electrify everything that's urban today, let's do it. That's 50% of the deal, 50% of emissions. And after, we can also go for autonomous, vehicles that can actually drive by themselves for 20 hours per day at a very limited speed and very safe way, and have electric drivers coming pick up the deliveries once they're close to the city. So it's all feasible. It's just like let's do the first step now, so that actually OEMs can understand that everybody is looking for those solutions, and they'll come in with more solutions.
If I could, embedded in that is that 50% of the emissions are in the long haul truck. And so this is a very important question, because half the air pollution has been in this particular class of activity. So getting it right really matters.
Very good. Well, I think we're at our limit for time. Thank you very much to the panelists for joining us today and for contributing your ideas, and to our audience. Thanks for being here.